and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding. Let's go with the Tao of Our Misunderstanding Recovery Podcast because it really is about our misunderstanding. I just have to give up my need to know. And what I see in Taoist thought, we're not Taoist. Also, something I've been meaning to mention, you can be a Christian and study the Tao Te Ching too. It's okay. You're not going to lose your Jesus card if you start studying the Tao Te Ching. You don't have to turn it in, I promise. You don't have to turn in your Jesus card. You like that, Dennis? Yeah, I like that too. Now, your ideas of Jesus may change as you study this, but you don't have to turn your card in. You don't have to denounce Christ and all those things. You don't have to become a heretic, because what we see in the Tao Te Ching are principles to live by that were ancient 2,500 years ago, and they so well blend with what we learn about modern day spirituality and recovery. And if you practice 12-step in recovery, this idea of the higher power that really is imposed upon us from the very beginning of our first 12-step meeting. I don't know if y'all felt that way, but I did. All I saw on the wall was God. That's all I saw. I didn't see anything else. I just saw God a million times on the wall. But as time went on, I realized God wasn't there as much as what I thought he was. It was really about my surrender, not what I believed or not what I thought. It was about me learning to let go. The difference between Taoist thought that I'm seeing, and if you study Zen, for example, some of us study as well, the Tao Te Ching gives us practical examples of how to, a lot of how to, in ways that are fairly easy to understand if we're open-minded. That's what I think of what we're looking at here. And if you're new to the podcast, you can go to buddyc.org, and there's a lot of resources there. Look under the resources tab. There's also a bookstore there that has a lot of the books that we use, if not all of them, and some more, if that's something that helps. There's also a daily Tao devotion that you can sign up for that I'm writing. Some of those sound like fortune cookies still, but some of them are good. Eventually, I will get those written through and publish those in a daily devotional book, like a daily reflections type book. But that's down the road. I'm going to work on those for a while longer before I publish, is my thought at the moment. So let's get started. We're talking about the 15th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Any comments before we get started? Comments on what I've already blurted out? Okay, what translations do you guys have that you'd like to read? Oh, I also put a link in the episode notes to an online version of the Tao Te Ching where you can read, I don't know what they have, 10 or 11 different translations. And that's what we use as we study for the most part. It has Stephen Mitchell, McDonald, Hogan, Guy Fu Fang, and several others. I think it's got Derek Lin in there as well. There's a number of different translations there. No, it does not have Derek Lin. Yes, it does. Derek Lin and several more. Who would like to begin with a translation?
I've got Stephen Mitchell's.
Yeah.
Okay, Drew.
The ancient masters were profound and subtle. Their wisdom was unfathomable. There's no way to describe it. All we can describe is their appearance. They were careful as someone crossing an iced-over stream, alert as a warrior in enemy territory, courteous as a guest, fluid as melting ice, shapeable as a block of wood, receptive as a valley, clear as a glass of water, Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? The master doesn't seek fulfillment. Not seeking, not expecting, she is present and can welcome all things.
It's powerful. Thank you. Any comments on that, Drew?
No, just lots of great metaphors in there, great visuals. That second stanza, alert as a warrior, courteous as a guest, fluid as melting ice, shapeable as a block of wood, receptive as a valley, clear as a glass of water, and then waiting till your mud settles and the water is clear. I like all those phrases that I can visualize. That kind of gets me thinking about it a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll go through each of those one by one before we're done. Brian, you have a translation for us?
Yeah, I've got the Jeff Pepper, which is Tao Te Ching in clear English. It says that the ancient masters were subtle, deep, and mysterious. We can't understand their mysterious depths. We can't understand them, but we must try to describe them. Cautious as if crossing a winter stream. Watchful as if afraid of threats from all sides. Respectful like a visiting guest. Yielding like the breakup of winter ice. Simple and honest like an uncarved block. Wide and open like a valley. Murky like muddy water. Who can take muddy water and through stillness make it clear? Who can take what is tranquil and through movement bring it to life? Maintain the Tao, and you won't want to be full. If you're not full, there is no need to be renewed.
What was that second to the last line?
Maintain the Tao, you won't want to be full.
Just before that.
Who can take what is tranquil and through movement bring it to life?
Yeah. Huh. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
To me, that speaks to being in the present.
Yeah. That idea of through stillness, we make it clear. That seems to be a thread as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like the muddy water. Oh, hey, Tina, I didn't say hello to everyone this morning. Good to have you, dear. That idea that, and we've heard it said other ways, can we let the mud settle till the right answer appears by itself? Dennis.
Yes, I really like this read here. So for me, the first stanza is just what we talk about all the time, that we cannot talk and understand it all, right? This is beyond comprehension of the human mind. Whenever we enter the spiritual thing, you cannot explain God, you cannot explain Tao. So that's why we can only describe it, which leads me to the second stanza, where it's described. And the way I see that is simply that when they're describing the masters like that in the second stanza, it describes the ability to be present, just to be. And that's amazing with all there's the alertness I see, like in Stephen Mitchell, it says alert as the warrior in enemy territory, but it can also just be alert for watching your thoughts. It doesn't necessarily have to be that it's an outside thing that you're alert for, right? And then in the third stanza it says, do you have the patience to just be, right? I think you started off the meeting saying the Tao of our misunderstanding, and I love that. I love when we say the God of our misunderstanding, because we think we know all the time, right? But it has nothing to do with knowledge. That's the good part of it. And then it ends off with the master doesn't seek fulfillment. He doesn't have to. He's already there. And that might be where it blends into the Zen teachings a little bit. That it all is what it's supposed to be right here and now. She's present and can welcome all things, even the bad things, right? If it doesn't work out my way, I get frustrated. I still do. I'm getting better at putting those pages into practice. What is it, 84 to 88, right? Where I learn to halt and just, okay, this is what I need to go through. And that's it. So that was the thoughts on it. It's very beautiful. I like it.
Let's go back to thank you, Dennis. Let's go back to that first stanza. I want to pick this apart some. Y'all interrupt me when you have something. There's no way to describe it. All we can do is describe the appearance. The strawberry metaphor. I can't describe to you how a strawberry tastes. I can talk about it, but you have to experience it. I can't in words put exactly what a strawberry tastes like. That feeling, the whole, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. We just got to taste one. That's the idea I get here. And isn't that the same thing with all spirituality? We have all kinds of other phrases that talk about that the words are the finger pointing at the moon. The words are not the gift. The gift is what's in between the words, right? It's that whole idea. That's why in recovery we talk about our experience. We don't talk about our knowledge. We talk about what happened to us. That's the description. That's the finger pointing at the moon. It's saying, hey, it's not important that I've been sober 15 years. What's important is how I've been sober for 15 years. That's what's important. That's why when I get so much out of a newcomer sometimes, I hear things that help me at my phase of recovery that I may be able to hear. Oh, I understand that. Yes, I needed to hear that. That helps me surrender in another little part of life that I had still been trying to fill myself.
It's so good. And now when you're mentioning recovery body, let me refer to powerless but not helpless. On the first stanza on verse 15 there, it says, we do not have adequate words to describe the way of sobriety. We can only describe its appearance. And that's our experience, the appearance of those, right? And then you connect to those people that you relate to, and then that's the beautiful thing.
It's like when Jesus talked about a light on a hill cannot be hidden. In the same way, our experience in recovery is the light. It's not our feeble understanding. How many of you guys, when you first got into recovery and now all of my ideas about everything has shifted so much and continue to shift, the way I understood it was irrelevant because it continues to change. What's relevant is how I've stayed sober. Dennis?
I hear that a lot from a lot of people. Those people that stays in recovery for a long time, they said it's not the same. My idea of God or whatever that thing is, it's not the same as when I got in here. And I tend to see that's where people seems more comfortable in living a sober life, is when you continue to stay open-minded and I keep seeking. That's how it changes. That's interesting, because that's probably that thing that the Tao thing and that thing that is probably the only thing that is unchangeable in a way, that godly thing or spiritual, whatever it is. So people call it Tao, God, the Big Bang, whatever it is, that is the only non-changing thing, yet it cannot be described. So it's so interesting to me. And see, already now when we're talking about it, I lose. It's hard to stay focused on it. I really lose focus on it because it's just undescribable but everlasting.
But that's all we have to talk about or words to use for this. So they're going to be incomplete.
Mm.
They're going to be incomplete. The way we experience is through surrender and allowing compassion into our lives, compassion toward others, and in return, compassion toward ourselves, and approaching situations from how can we be helpful rather than how can I get what I think I need out of you. That's the shift. Okay. Careful as someone crossing an iced over stream. You guys ever, I'm sure you have at some point in life, maybe crossed an icy stream, an iced over or an iced over pond or whatever the case. Man, you just, with every step, you're cautious. And you by no means think you have this figured out. And I remember when I was a kid, at times I just wanted to take off and run. So maybe I can make it to the other side and just run as hard as I could. Usually that was not the right answer. Usually it was just careful, slow steps. Careful, slow. Really being vulnerable, because I am vulnerable. You're vulnerable in that position.
I only did that once, buddy, but that was probably because I fell through the ice right immediately and stand to waist deep water. So that was enough for me.
Yeah, but it's that attitude, right? It's talking about an attitude, like an attitude of vulnerableness. Do what?
No, that's actually pretty good. Vulnerable. I think that's, and especially coming from a recovery point of view, it's very important for me to be vulnerable enough to talk about what's going on with me, and also being open towards others. Right. That's a good metaphor to use it like that. Being vulnerable in your life is important. We're taught, especially for men, we're taught to not show emotions and all that, and not be vulnerable. That kind of flips the script 180 degrees for me. However, that's the way I seem to grow better.
I was talking to a sponsee this week that had a situation at work that he should have caught that this product was not what his customer would want. And instead of stopping and calling the customer, he went ahead and finished the job. Then the customer wasn't happy with it. And I said, so what's your part? He said, I said, should you have called the customer? He said, I knew to, I just didn't do it. I said, for me to get relief in a situation like that, I have to be vulnerable and honest and say, hey, this is what I should have done. This is what I didn't do. How can I make this right? That honesty and vulnerableness. I had a situation not long ago where I was supposed to speak on a podcast. I had been booked for months and months. They book way out. I planned for it that morning, was ready. I went and played pickleball and totally, absolutely spaced. Did not remember it was happening. So when I realized it, I was at the court, right? I was like, oh, shit. Oh. So I made something up. I lied because I just felt pressured. And I forget what I said, but it was something deflected in some way. I forget. It wasn't on my schedule. It was something that I just deflected because I just felt so pressured, So I went the other direction. And then when I got home, I said, I've got to fess up. So I fessed up. And the guy said, he says, I'm really glad that you forgot it. We had the most incredible conversation in the group that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And it was a situation where I think I forgot on purpose, and it made me look bad, but yet it was what they needed. I don't understand how all that works, but I know the other dynamic in that is that I had to be honest with the guy. I said, look, I just forgot. I'm sorry. What can I do here? And I finally, what would have been best was in the very beginning, I did that. But I had to suffer for a little while before I could be honest about it. But that vulnerability is what brought relief. It wasn't me doubling down on protecting me. It was me being vulnerable. Is that not the case with an icy stream or a warrior in enemy territory is very alert? How does a guest, I relate more out of any of those to the guest example. Can you be a guest in your own life? Can you treat your life as if you're a guest in your life? If I'm a guest in someone's house and something negative is or they get in a fight or there's something happening, do I get involved? No, I step back and keep my space. You see the difference in being a guest and then being the director?
That's good. It's like being the observer at the same time.
Yes.
Like you were drawing from thoughts. You were drawing from the thoughts that you were attached to, and that's the beginning of how we unravel our little ego and how much the ego, like you mentioned before, is trying to protect itself all the time. Yes. So can you withdraw from that and be vulnerable enough to see, hey, this is just what it is, and this is what it's supposed to be, and this is my next course of action because I'm being selfish here, and how can I correct that, right?
Yes.
That is so good. I like the guest thing. That's be a guest in your own life. What a wonderful thing. You don't have to participate in any argument with others.
For me, these three, the crossing iced over stream, the warrior in enemy territory, courteous as a guest, what I get out of those is getting out of habitual behaviors. Because I've never crossed over an iced over stream, but I've walked on icy sidewalks. That's about as close as I've ever gotten. Walking is habitual. You just walk, you don't think about it, you just do it. When I've been on icy sidewalks, my focus is on my steps. I'm not walking habitually anymore. I'm actually focused on where my heel lands, where my toes land, where I'm picking up, where the weight in my body is, where my balance is at the moment.
In the moment, right? In the moment.
Yeah, if any wind is blowing, if anybody's coming my direction, just very present. And a warrior in enemy territory would be doing the same thing. If he's in his own territory, he's probably doing habitual behaviors, things that he does every day without thinking about it. But in enemy territory, those habits are gone, and the warrior is very present and not engaging in the behaviors he usually does. Courteous as a guest, same thing. When I'm in my house, I'm engaging in habitual patterns all the time without even thinking about it. But when I'm in somebody else's house, I'm much more present. And being in somebody else's house, I'm much more present. Like Buddy was saying, if something happens in their house, I step back and ask if I can help, if they need help, or just offer it if I can, or just go into another room, go into the backyard, play with the dog or something. But courteous as a guest, I can also see that as I am a guest in my own house, really. This house isn't me. It'll hopefully be here after I'm gone. Hopefully nothing happens to it while I'm here. But being a guest on Earth, being a guest in the universe, we're all just passing through. So those three to me tie together in that way. Just being present, stepping out of habitual behavior.
Thanks, Drew. Anyone else?
Buddy, it reminds me of the opposite from so-called masters, people that strut their recovery, or the divas or the monk on the mountain kind of a thing. We're talking about people who have mastered it, and if they're crossing a icy river or a dangerous situation, they're going to be cautious. Common sense. If you're around people that might be a threat to you, you lay a little bit low and not bring attention to yourself. It's clear, and it's opposite of those that kind of bragging about things or are so aloof that they're not paying attention to everyday difficulties or everyday hazards and those kinds of things. So it's part of the vulnerability, part of being present, but it's also part of just being an animal that goes with its nature according to the circumstances.
Thanks, Lou. Reminds me of one of the Zen books. I forget which one. When the master students would come, so what would you have me do? He says, I want you to sit for 10 years. So they meditated for 10 years. And they didn't meditate all day, other than in specific times. They'd meditate 4 hours in the morning, and then they would have all their duties they had to do. So it's not like they sat from 2 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day of their life. So it's not that. But they did have times when they did that for a week at a time and a few days at a time, different things. But for 10 years, they practiced. And then they would come and say, what would you have me to do at this point? He says, sit 10 more years. And so they'd sit 10 more years. Then they'd go talk to him and say, now sit 10 more years. Because they didn't tell them, I want you to sit 30 years up front, because no one would do that. But 10 years at a time, 10 years wouldn't be palatable to me. Maybe they'd need to tell me sit for a week or something. And then after 30 years, you may be able to start seeing a little of what's really going on after 30 years of sitting. So that's the idea here. I see those first few as slowing us down. That if I'm walking on an icy sidewalk and I don't slow down, I'm going to learn really quick that I've got to slow down, bust my ass. Once I do, I am much more careful. Fluid is melting ice. Man, I am not going to sit and watch ice melt. It's that idea of losing your impatience, I think. Just that be still and know that I am God. Be still and know. Be still. Then you can be. Dennis.
Oh, what you touched on there, and you probably remember this too, another story about the master and the apprentice. The apprentice is eager for knowledge in this sin, right? And he was keep asking the master, so what do we do next? And they were about to eat lunch, and he was just eat your lunch. And he was just so eager to eat his lunch, so he ate it so fast. So he could ask questions, what can I get next to reach the next level of meditation? How do I do this? And each question just developed another question, and he would go into it. And when he was done eating, he says, so now what, master? Master, oh, go wash your bowl. And that was the only answer he had. So just slow down. You're exactly where you need to be, and just relax, where we want the knowledge here and now to figure out everything, right? That was what it reminded me of.
Does a slow and steady, yeah. Does a block of wood have any control over what it is made into? Shapeable as a block of wood. That's where you're moving toward with this. That vulnerability we've been talking about, we're moving toward a place of surrender, really. You don't come up and say, oh, I'm going to take this block of wood and make it into, I don't know, a vase, or even if I'm going to cut it up for firewood. The block to say, whoa, now let's talk about what we're going to do here. I don't really like that. I want another plant. No, the block of wood doesn't do that. The block of wood can be made into anything that the master so desires. It's not up to the block of wood. And that's, I think, where we're heading with our life, is moving to a place that we're okay with whatever comes our way. And that's for me, I have moved from everything is as it should be to everything's just as it is. Because that way, I'm not thinking about reward or punishment or any of those other things I can add to the current situation. Well, this situation is bad. Oh, karma. Same thing. The way people throw that word around. Yeah, I'm just learning that things are just as they are. That's what Byron Katie says, that God's what is. Okay. I can see that because it's pointing us to the moment. Receptive as a valley. Does a valley have any control over how much rain or what crops are planted? The valley, we might like the mountaintop, but the valley is where we live. We don't get our sustenance from the mountaintop. We get our sustenance from the valley. We don't think about that very much. That's where the fertile ground is. That's where everything's grown. It's not on the mountaintop. It's where water's found. We don't find much water on the mountaintop. Might be pretty, but we can't live there. Then they move to the glass of water. That patience to just sit and let the water settle. If I'm letting water settle, my job is to leave it alone. Be still. And then the right answer shows by itself. Tina?
This reminds me of a book, and the author escapes me, but I used to read it to my preschoolers, and it's called Peaceful Piggies. And I would take this jar and we'd put in their thoughts and their worries, whether it be a gold star, confetti and glitter and rocks and mud. And then we would shake it and talk about those thoughts in our brain and then just let it settle. And while you let it settle, you're just sitting and breathing and meditating. It's a little introduction to that. And the jar is so pretty at the end when we realize how clear the top is and how everything settles. And it's a really good way to visually teach that. And how pretty, and it says how pretty that, and out of that stillness, life arises. And that's where you can really see how pretty it is. Otherwise, it's all mucked up and muddy. But it was a great, simple way. So if you want to add Peaceful Piggies to your book recommendations, I'll find out the author.
I will do that. Thank you, Tina. Peaceful Piggies. Okay. I have it. Anything else about those analogies? When we're done with those, I want to move to that last stanza. But we're in no rush.
To me, the mud settling and water until the water is clear, that's the goal of meditation and mindfulness practice for me is, and that's for me the best way to visualize it is just allowing all the mud, all the stuff that's been roiled up by my thoughts, by my worries and fears and resentments and everything. When I get into those thought loops and thought patterns, the mud in my mind is definitely all roiled up, and it's like a river where you can't see an inch into it just because there's so much dirt and muck moving about. But being present and meditating and doing mindfulness practices helps all of that settle down to the bottom and allow the water to clear up so I can see further and have a better grasp on what reality actually is.
The operative word there, Drew, being allow. When I start to get in a confrontation of some type, I know before I'm there. I know it's coming. I can see it. I can see that big light like the train coming toward me. It's coming. At that point, I have a choice. Am I going to stir this shit up and keep it stirred, or am I going to allow? Am I going to step back? What a good analogy with the muddy water. I don't know how long it's going to take for it to settle, but my job's the same. Am I allowing it to settle? Can I let this situation just work out in front of me without me stirring it? I have a work situation where I've been doing some work for a guy, and he promised me all of this work, but he's not held up his part of the bargain. And it bothers me that he's not done what he said. I want to call him on this, right? But yet, when I look at it, if I were getting everything he said, I wouldn't have the time to do the other things that I need to be doing. So it's exactly what I need. But yet I don't like it because He hasn't done what he said he would do. It's odd, and I have had to work very hard to allow that situation just to work through. And if I were getting all the work, I just wouldn't have time for these other things. And I'm like, wow, I really am getting exactly what I need. This guy being untruthful is being used in really what I really need. And he'll say, oh, yeah, and I have to ignore it. Matter of fact, I did something very kind for him this week that I didn't have to do when I wanted to do the opposite and tell him to stick the whole thing up his ass and blah, 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 blah. I wanted to just go off on him. And same way with that podcast interview where a negative was used in someone else's, what a perceived negative in my life was used as a positive in someone else's.
Actually, since now when we don't have Amy here anymore, what you just touched on there, I want to touch on that from the big book. On the bottom of page 87, it says that as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action, or we observe it, right? We can sit with it. We constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. I'm going with the flow. I added that part. We're then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily. For when we're not burning up energy foolishly, as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves, it works. It really does.
Thank you, Dennis. That was good. Thank you, sir.
Dennis, where was that at? I've heard that many times. What page?
The last paragraph of page 87, and then the end of that.
Yeah. 86, 87. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, buddy. It's funny you mentioned the situation with your work. I was laying there really early this morning thinking about a large project that I've got a quote, and I've got a stack of drawings that I'm going to look at this weekend. And immediately I'm thinking about, man, this would be so good to get this job. I can just drill down and just knock this out. And realistically, I feel I really need an extra week on this. And so I do have some concern that this extra week of lead time that I'm going to ask for, having that little bit of margin, is possibly going to put me out of the running for this. But I need to be okay with that, because before this project came in, I was okay. And I don't need to I need to be okay with asking for 5 weeks and say, I'm going to do my best to have it in 4 or maybe even quicker, but it could be long as 5, because I realize that I don't do well when I start drilling down. I start making mistakes, and then the rail cars start piling up one after another. And so that's really given me some clarity going into the weekend, knowing that I've got that I need to make a decision on this. So
thanks, Brian. Good. Anyone else?
Buddy, maybe you've talked about it before, but I couldn't help but think of the 30 years meditation and how we didn't tell him right up front. It reminded me of the 1 hour at a time and the 1 day at a time. Because if somebody were to say you're going to be sober for the rest of your life starting today,
right,
that's so overwhelming. But I could relate to that. And sometimes even still, I just say, okay, just for today, I'm going to not drink just for today. And sometimes I have to say that when my mind starts to play tricks on me. I wanted to tell, I think, Dennis, are you in Italy? Is that where you're at?
That would be Italy, Cartersville, Georgia. No, it might be my accent that's fooling with you. Okay. I'm not in Italy. I'm in Georgia.
We are heading to Italy next week, and it's through like a customer takes their top 20 customers to Italy as a thank you every 2 years. And so I've been on this trip before, but we visit vineyards, there's going to be clinking wine glasses. And that was my thing. But I've done it sober before, so I have confidence in myself. But I have to go back to just for this hour. And I know that with myself. I've been in recovery since 2014, and I'm still nervous, but I'm crossing that icy river. I have to be that diligent. I can't think this will be no problem. I've done it before, or I've been here long enough. I can't think that way. And I think my higher power, I allow that healthy fear, and I have to watch it that it doesn't get unhealthy, but where I obsess over it because I have OCD and I can do that if I start to overfocus. But I'm going to be taking it 1 hour at a time. There's really not any AA meetings in Italy. I've checked. There's a few. Not like when I've been in other countries where they have plenty, but so that's what made me think of that and apply it to my life. And also, buddy, I think that if you ever do your own interpretation of the Tao, you have to put in that line, once I bust my ass, I'm more careful. Because I think that's like the perfect, it's so true. And I have busted my ass in sobriety before. And I know how it feels, and it is horrible. And I have to keep remembering that too. But I also thought that I love that when we do the letting things settle, how things become, and it's funny how they say the water becomes crystal clear, but things become more clear. And what I also wanted to say was we need that longevity. I need the longevity of sitting and letting that mud settle and the sparkles settle and all my thoughts settle. Because if I pick up that jar and want to check on it again, I'm disrupting it. I know that I need a chunk of time to myself to let all that stuff settle. And if I don't take it, I'm running around with that murky brain, with that stuff all flowing around my head. And that actually, I needed to hear that this morning because I'm packing, I'm preparing, I'm making sure we have dog food and all this stuff. And if I don't stop and let my brain settle like I've done here with you guys this morning, it is just adding more chaos on top of more chaos. So that's where I'm at. And I wanted to say that if you guys are praying people, throw an extra prayer for me next week because I am a little nervous, but I think it's a healthy thing. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you. Anyone else?
I was just thinking on my experience with that. It sounds like if you used to be a wine drinker and going to Italy, it can sound for me a little bit like if you're a booze drinker and camping out in a liquor store. That's how it sounds like. So I feel that, and my experience is when I go towards that, I can distract my brain. That means that I can go look at beautiful churches. So I can go away from those things. That's my experience to deal with because I used to be a big romanticizer and a big wine drinker too. Love that and been to Italy once. Want to go again. So I was just thinking I would try to take my mind off of it by looking at the beautiful architecture or something there's there. And if I am in social settings, always make sure that I can leave all those things we learn from the rooms. That's really something that helps with that. That just came to mind. But again, that's only my experience. I don't have any advice because I get it. I'm there with you. I feel it.
Thank you, Dennis. That helps a lot.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, Tina, I went through that experience last week, actually. Big group of friends and I, friends from childhood since we were 7 years old, and their partners, my partner, some of their friends who I've never met before. We all rented a big house for a week up in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Beautiful place. And my partner and I are the only ones who don't drink or smoke pot. Everybody else does. And they went at it all week, morning to night, waking up to going to bed every hour in between. And there were several instances where I was just walking through the house, usually in the morning when people were asleep, walking in the house. Yeah, exactly. And here's a pipe and some pot next to it, just like a old after school special. And that's really my vice. And just seeing it there by myself, nobody would have known, nobody would have cared. I just had to look at it and say, "Oh, I gotta make breakfast right now. Not going to be doing that." Well, I'm going to a museum with my partner, and that wouldn't be the best idea to do that before going to a museum. Like Dennis was saying, had to do a lot of excursions with my partner, which were great. We did several things throughout the week by ourselves and loved it and had a great time, and wished our friends could have come with us, but they stayed behind at the house and did their thing. None of us judged each other for what we were doing or not doing, and they all totally respect me and my decisions. They never offered me anything ever at all because they know I've been open with them about where I am, which makes me really thankful that they are my friends, because we can all do that and be open and honest with each other and respect each other. And I never asked anybody to put anything away. They never asked me to have some, which was great. It doesn't sound like you have those relationships, with the other people you're going with. You may know them all really well. If you do, then I might be a little open with them about where you are, so nobody tries to push wine on you or make fun of you or just joking, that sort of thing, if you have that relationship. But if not, like Dennis was saying, finding other things to do, even if it's going to the vineyard with them, but stepping away and going to look at the flowers that you've never seen before, or these interesting bugs, or architecture, the buildings, all that. Those were things that we did last week. Just step away from it and notice the things that are around you. Get a little bit away from the situation if you can.
I didn't even know folks still smoked. I thought they all did edibles or vaped or.
Oh, they do everything.
But because my friends, they would use gummies or something, but they said take a couple of hours for it to take effect. So they didn't really like that it took so long. Mm-hmm. And so they would vape first and then they'd do edibles and on top of that. So I don't know. It's good that you found a way to do that, Drew. Before we close, we're coming up on the hour. Been a great conversation. Like a lot of these, they close with the real meat of what we're looking for. The master does not seek fulfillment, which is the opposite of what I'm doing all the time. It's not everything that I am doing is seeking fulfillment when I think about it. So much of how can I be happy? What can make my life better? A lot of that is seeking fulfillment. Now, instead, the master, instead of seeking, instead of expectations, the master is present and can welcome all things. Man, sometimes I am so far from that. I am not a welcoming person when it's not something that I like. Oh, come on in. Death, come on in. Yeah, you welcome. Not even just allowing, welcoming. There's a difference between allowing something and welcoming it, isn't it? Think about it.
Yeah, when you're allowing something, you're still in control. But welcoming, it's more like letting go, isn't it? I'm welcoming, isn't that it?
When I'm thinking about it, Dennis, I'm thinking about allowing would be permitting. I'm permitting this to happen, but that doesn't mean I'm just, that's the
You're
allowing
competing
part.
with anxiety, aren't you?
I'm
allowing
already
it to
anxious.
happen
Yes.
right now, but I don't like it.
Yes. It's like the little kid that his dad got on him and said, sit your ass down. You're going to sit in that chair. Don't stand up. And he sat down. He said, Daddy, I said, how do you say it? I'm sitting down on the outside, but I'm still standing on the inside.
That's good.
Man, I stand on the inside all of the time. Yeah, I'm doing it, but I don't like it. Like
funny.
with this. Dude, go ahead, Lou.
No, I said that's funny, but it's true.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing with this guy I'm working for. Man, I'm sitting on the outside, but in the inside, I am screaming every time I talk to him because I want to call him on his shit. And it's not my place. Be counterproductive. Tina.
Thanks, buddy, for that. That is the best. That's the way to put it. I'm always standing on the inside when I'm told to sit down, man. And that's exhausting, fighting what is. Right?
Yes. Yes.
I wanted to tell Brian T. When you said going into the weekend and worrying about this situation, and I know because my husband runs a shop and he is the lead time and trying to figure all that out and have it even out at the end of the month is difficult. But it reminded me of, and I know this is a little bit of a different situation, but last time we were out of town, I couldn't find a dog sitter. And that's a stressful thing when your dog's your baby. Yeah. But I remember stressing about it so hard one night, and I was at a basketball game, one of my kids' games, and I thought, Tina, you need to be focusing here. You're worrying about something you can't solve until tomorrow. And I know it sounds so simple, but I said, oh, there will be an answer. It's like I always say from Neil Donald Walsh that he says, your problems have already been solved for you. So act accordingly. And I remember that night. And if I can do it starting with the small things, I can maybe do it with the bigger things. But I said, I'm going to put that on the shelf. And I'm not going to worry about it till tomorrow, as if I almost scheduled it. Like that I'm not doing right now. And I couldn't believe how well it worked. And I've done it a couple times since then. But you have to start it. For me, I just started with the small stuff. And remembering that my problems have already been solved for me. And then also, I don't care what happens, if you can have that attitude. But that's a really hard, but I have to start it with the smaller things. Even though it was a big thing to me, I knew it would be solved. But try to give yourself a break from that, because we need that time to let all that stuff settle. But I was feeling that when you were talking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tina. When we can keep our stress or what we're concerned about in today. I remember when my son was sick, I was thinking, oh, what's going to happen? And I was already into all of the 24-hour care 20 years from now. When he's sick in the hospital, not knowing whether he's going to live or not. I said, whoa, wait, buddy. Today, this is all we have to be concerned about. What's the Bible verse about that? That Jesus said there's enough care for the day. Don't borrow from tomorrow's care. In other words, just deal with what we have to now and in this moment. So many good parallels with Jesus's teaching and what we see here. So much good stuff. Yeah. Welcoming all things. I'd never seen that before. That is like the advanced. That's the advanced course. We're still on the kindergarten course. This is the master's course here, welcoming. Oh, my goodness. It just starts with slowing down in this moment, learning to breathe, just being, letting things be still a little more, shaking the mud a little less, instructing the sculptor a little less as how to sculpt you.
The whole verse reminds me of and you use this a lot too, buddy, surrender to what is.
Yes.
That is when we're sitting here talking, and the whole thing is just to surrender to the world as it is, not as how I want it to be. Right. That is.
There's one thing in there that it says the master is and this is actually more of how the master behaves, not a description of the master. It says the master's present. And that's what we're pointing to with all of this, is being present. If I am present, it takes care of so much of this for us already, automatically. If I can learn to be where my feet are, so much of this kind of fades away. Because if I'm present, I'm not into next week. I'm not into fixing and controlling and manipulating and managing. If I can see, if I'm in acceptance, that's what being present is accepting the moment for what it is. Doesn't mean that I approve it or disapprove it. It means I'm just present with what is. And compassion does that for me. It gets me into the moment. If I'm having trouble with my head, just go do something for someone and see if you don't become more present, because you can only do that right now. So, Tina, when you're in Italy, how can you show some gratitude? Who can you help in that moment? How can you be grateful in that moment? That's where I try to go.
You know what? I was just thinking, thanks to Dennis, I was just thinking when he had said, go out and look at the churches. And yeah, that's such a good idea. And I needed someone to give me permission to do that. I don't know why. And I am. Someone else, I'm thinking, buddy, when you just said, what can you do for others? I'm a photographer. I could take pictures for them while they're enjoying their dinner. And that's something I love to do. And people would probably appreciate that. So thank you guys so much for your input. It's really given me hope. And that's sometimes all you need.
Yeah,
that actually works every time. And I had a good story with Buddy here, because we talked, this is many years ago, or a couple of years ago at least, where I couldn't understand, because I see a lot of people in recovery that sometimes overdo it with others, where they neglect to look at themselves. And I brought it up to Buddy, and he came back a couple of days after and said, yeah, I don't really see it that way. And then I started practicing it after he said that, because I thought, hey, I got to take care of me first. But actually me being out there and do exactly what Buddy is saying, where can I fit in and help somebody else? In that exact moment, I do that act of love towards somebody else without expecting something back. I feel that love immediately. And that growth and presence there is just spectacular. And that took me a couple of years to get to that, because I really thought that, hey, I can't transmit something I haven't got, so I have to take care of me first. That kind of went out the window with that. So, Buddy, thank you for banging that in my head the right way, where I don't have to stand on the inside anymore and just do it. That's it.
And that does not mean that we do overt actions of love. I don't know, some miraculous something. All that means is, it might mean at Thanksgiving when I'm getting squirrely, when they're telling the same story the second time at the higher level of volume, and they're drinking and it's starting to bother me, that I just get up and start cleaning up the dishes, or I go play with the kids, or something so simple that we think it has to be some major thing, but it really doesn't. It can be these little things that can help to keep us right-sized and in the moment.
And then the common thing that always comes, and it's very simple for me, other people smoking weed or drinking wine or whatever they're drinking is not really a problem. Me doing that is a problem.
And they never care whether I'm doing it or not, Dennis.
Yeah.
They really didn't care. I was surprised. They never cared. Actually, they were glad. In some circles, they were glad I wasn't drinking and smoking, because I showed my ass sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Drew? Well, you guys have a great week. I guess we won't see you next week, Tina. You'll be in Italy. Is that right?
Unless it's at a time that I need a meeting and can hop on and have Wi-Fi, then you'll see me.
It'll be in the
Okay.
afternoon. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a great week. If you need anything, Tina, reach out. You know how to get in touch with us.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
All right.
Thanks.
We can even have an impromptu meeting if you ever need it. You know, that we're not opposed to doing that.
I won't be afraid to ask for that. So thank you. Thank you
Sure.
very much.
Anytime, guys. That's good for anyone. We'll do that. So
Yep.
you guys have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.